It was one of those nights when the wind carried a chill that felt heavier than usual, and the stars hid behind thick clouds like even they didn't want to watch what life was doing to her. Maya had $8 left to her name, crumpled bills in her worn-out wallet, and a car running on fumes. She'd been driving aimlessly, praying the universe would give her a sign that things would get better. Her mother had passed 6 months ago, the rent was 3 months overdue, and her dream of finishing nursing school felt like a cruel joke now. The world didn't owe her a thing, but she still believed, somehow, that kindness mattered, even when no one saw it. That's why she stopped at that gas station on the edge of Route 12, the one lit by a single flickering bulb, where the silence of the night was broken only by the hum of a far-off motorcycle engine. She thought she was alone. But then she heard it, a crash, a grunt, and the unmistakable sound of a man hitting the pavement hard. Her instincts kicked in. At first, she hesitated. It was late, and the streets were empty. She was a young black woman alone in a rough part of town, and the last thing she wanted was trouble. But something inside her, something that sounded like her mother's voice, whispered, "Don't walk away when someone's in pain." She followed the noise and saw him near the gas pumps, a tall, rugged man with silver hair and a thick beard, wearing a black leather vest with red patches that read Hell's Angels. His motorcycle was tipped on its side, the chrome still gleaming under the dim light. He was clutching his side, breathing heavy, and his face was pale with pain. Maya froze for a moment, every warning she'd ever heard flashing through her mind. Don't mess with bikers. They're dangerous. They don't care about people like you. But what she saw wasn't danger, it was a human being in trouble. She ran over, kneeling beside him. "Sir, are you okay?" she asked, her voice steady but gentle. He tried to wave her off, muttering something through gritted teeth. "I'm fine, just a fall." But he wasn't fine. His hands trembled, and blood seeped through his glove from a nasty cut near his ribs. She could smell alcohol faintly, but it wasn't the smell of recklessness, it was pain management, maybe something deeper. "You're not fine," she said firmly, opening her bag. "Let me help you." He looked up at her, and for a brief second, their eyes met, hers filled with determination, his filled with disbelief. It was rare for anyone to care. She tore open a napkin from her glove box, poured some water from her last bottle over his wound, and pressed gently. He winced, then let out a shaky breath. "You shouldn't get involved, kid," he rasped. "People like me bring trouble." She smiled faintly, shaking her head. "And people like me don't walk away." As she helped him sit up, he studied her face, her exhaustion, her kindness, and the quiet strength she carried like armor. "What's your name?" he asked. "Maya," she replied. "And yours?" He hesitated before saying, "Reed." The name sounded heavy, like it carried a lifetime of scars. Maya glanced at the motorcycle beside him. It was beautiful but battered, with hand-painted flames and an old photo taped to the tank, showing a younger man and a little girl smiling under a clear sky. "Your daughter?" she asked softly. He didn't answer right away. His eyes softened, then turned away. "Yeah, she's gone. Long time ago." The words came out like broken glass. She didn't press him. She just sat beside him in silence, offering him water and understanding he hadn't asked for. When she realized how pale he was getting, she said, "You need food, or you'll pass out again." He shook his head. "Don't waste your money on me." But Maya already knew what she was going to do. She reached into her pocket, pulled out her last $8, and walked inside the small gas station store. She bought a sandwich, a pack of bandages, and another bottle of water. When she came out, Reed looked at her like she was out of her mind. "You shouldn't have done that," he muttered. "That was probably all you had." Maya just shrugged, tearing the sandwich in half. "Then it's a good thing I don't need a lot to sleep at night." They sat there under the buzzing light, sharing that sandwich like two strangers bound by a quiet truth, that the world could still surprise you with goodness. Reed told her he'd been riding for days, trying to make it home after visiting an old friend in the hospital. He'd been having dizzy spells, but he ignored them. That night, his body just gave out. Maya listened, nodding, offering the kind of empathy that didn't need words. When he asked why she'd stopped, she smiled sadly. "Because once, when I was at my lowest, someone stopped for me too. I guess I'm just passing it on." The sound of engines roared in the distance then, low, powerful, and multiplying. Reed stiffened. "Stay behind me," he said, trying to push himself up, but he winced. The roar grew louder until a line of motorcycles appeared, their headlights cutting through the dark. Maya's heart pounded. "Who are they?" she whispered. Reed smiled faintly. "Family." The bikes pulled in and circled the station like a protective pack. Men and women in leather jackets climbed off, their faces a mix of worry and relief. One of them, a huge man with tattoos covering his arms, walked straight to Reed. "Brother, we thought we lost you." Reed nodded weakly. "Almost." The man's eyes fell on Maya, standing there uncertainly. "She helped me," Reed said simply. That was all he needed to say. The bikers looked at her differently after that, not as a stranger, but as someone who'd done something sacred. One of the women handed Maya a small card with the group's emblem. "If you ever need anything, you call this number," she said firmly. Maya smiled awkwardly, not sure what to say. The bikers helped Reed onto one of their bikes, securing his motorcycle to a trailer. Before leaving, Reed looked back at her and said, "Maya, you saved more than my life tonight. You reminded me that good still exists." And then they rode away, disappearing into the night, leaving her standing under that flickering light with a strange warmth in her chest and tears in her eyes. She didn't expect to ever see him again. She didn't expect her small act of kindness to ripple through anyone's life. But as she drove home, her gas tank nearly empty, she felt lighter than she had in months. She didn't know that her story wasn't over. Because sometimes, the smallest gesture, a bottle of water, a shared sandwich, $8 spent on a stranger, can echo louder than you imagine. The next morning, Maya woke up to the sound of rumbling engines outside her tiny apartment. Dozens of them. She thought she was dreaming. She opened her window, and what she saw made her heart stop. An entire convoy of motorcycles lined up down her street, chrome shining in the sunlight. Men and women in leather jackets stood beside them, holding helmets, smiling. At the front was Reed, standing tall, healed, and holding something in his hand that glimmered like a promise. Maya didn't know it yet, but her life was about to change forever. Maya stood frozen at her window, her heart hammering so loudly it drowned out the chorus of engines below. The roar of 100 motorcycles filled the quiet morning air, echoing off the narrow buildings of her worn-down street like rolling thunder announcing something extraordinary. Her mind raced. Had something happened? Was this some kind of mistake? But then she saw him, Reed, the grizzled man she had helped at the gas station, standing proudly beside a massive black Harley, his beard trimmed, his eyes alive with purpose. He looked stronger now, cleaner, like a man reborn. The leather vest still bore the words Hell's Angels, but beneath it, his posture spoke of gratitude, not menace. Maya's neighbor peeked through her curtain and gasped, "Girl, what did you do?" Maya didn't answer. She just ran downstairs, her heartbeat matching the pulse of those engines. As soon as she stepped outside, the sound dimmed. One by one, the bikers cut their engines, leaving only the soft ticking of cooling metal and the heavy silence that followed. Every eye turned toward her. For a moment, she felt small, like the world had suddenly tilted and placed her at its center. Reed took a few steps forward, smiling faintly. "Morning, Maya," he said, his deep voice carrying over the still air. "We figured we owed you something." Maya blinked, confused. "You don't owe me anything," she said quietly. "I just did what anyone would have done." Reed chuckled low. "That's the thing, darlin', most people wouldn't. You spent your last dollars on a man who looked like trouble, and you didn't even flinch. That kind of heart doesn't come around much." The other bikers nodded, murmuring in agreement. A tall woman with silver braids stepped forward holding a bouquet of sunflowers, their golden heads glowing bright against the sea of black leather. "These are for you," she said. "Because you brought some light back into one of our darkest brothers." Maya smiled, still dazed. This is too much." But Reed shook his head. "No, this is right. You see, Maya, that night, you didn't just help me. You reminded me why we started this brotherhood in the first place. Loyalty. Honor. Compassion. Somewhere along the line, I forgot those things. But your kindness, it woke me up." He motioned to one of the bikers, who nodded and opened the back of a pickup truck parked behind them. Maya's breath caught when she saw what was inside, a motorcycle, sleek and beautiful, painted in deep midnight blue with silver angel wings brushed across the sides. It wasn't new, but it had been restored with love. A small tag on the handlebars read, "For Maya, ride free." Her eyes widened. "I can't accept this," she stammered. "It's too much. I don't even know how to ride." Reed smiled softly. "Then we'll teach you. Every one of us here was a lost soul once, until someone handed us a set of keys and said, 'You belong.' That's what we're doing for you now." She pressed a hand over her heart, her throat tightening. For so long, she had felt invisible, just another struggling girl trying to make ends meet, holding on to kindness because it was all she had left. And now, standing there with tears blurring her vision, she realized that small acts really could ripple through the world in ways you'd never predict. Reed turned to the group and said, "Brothers, sisters, today, we ride for Maya." A cheer went up, loud and fierce, shaking the ground. They revved their engines again, not as a warning but as a salute. The sound rolled like thunder, but it wasn't fearsome, it was music, a promise that goodness still had power in this world. Reed handed her a black leather jacket, smaller than the others, with a patch on the back that said Angels of Grace. "This one's just for you," he said. "A new chapter, your own." The day unfolded like a dream. The bikers didn't just deliver a motorcycle, they spent the whole afternoon fixing up Maya's yard, repainting her cracked porch, and leaving baskets of groceries by her door. They told her stories about the road, about broken men finding family again, about loyalty, and about how Reed had nearly given up until she showed him that kindness could still heal. One of them, a woman named Tessa, sat with Maya and asked about her life. Maya told her everything, about losing her mom, about dropping out of nursing school, about the constant weight of trying to survive. Tessa listened, then pulled something from her pocket, a folded envelope. "We took a vote last night," she said. "And we decided that if one of us could find our way back because of you, then maybe we could help you find yours too." Maya opened the envelope slowly, and her hands trembled. Inside was a check, enough money to pay her rent, clear her debts, and go back to school. She gasped, tears spilling freely. I don't know what to say." Tessa grinned. "Just promise us one thing. When you get that nursing license, you keep helping people, the way you helped him." Maya nodded, unable to speak. Reed clapped a hand on her shoulder. "You already have the heart for it. Now we're just giving you the wings." As the sun began to dip below the horizon, painting the sky with shades of gold and rose, the bikers gathered for one last ride. Reed motioned for Maya to climb onto the new bike. "Come on," he said. "Let's take her for a spin." Nervous but exhilarated, she climbed on behind him. "Hold on tight," he said with a grin. The engines roared to life again, and the pack rolled out, the air filled with the scent of freedom and asphalt. They rode through town, past the gas station where it all began, people staring in awe as the convoy thundered by, 100 riders escorting a young woman whose life had been changed by a single act of kindness. For the first time in months, Maya laughed. The wind whipped through her hair, and the stars, those same stars that had hidden from her despair, now blinked awake, watching her rebirth with approval. When they reached the open stretch of road, Reed pulled over and gestured for her to take the handlebars. "Your turn," he said. She hesitated. "What if I fall?" Reed smiled knowingly. "Then we'll be right here to pick you up." Maya gripped the handles, started the engine, and felt its power hum beneath her fingers. Slowly, she took off, the bike gliding forward as if it knew she was meant to ride it. The others followed, forming a protective circle around her as she gained confidence. The road stretched endlessly ahead, open, alive, and full of possibility. In that moment, she wasn't just a struggling girl anymore. She was a symbol of something bigger, proof that even when you have nothing, the way you treat people can become your greatest wealth. When they returned to her street, the bikers parked and gathered for one last photo, Maya in the middle, smiling brighter than she ever had before. Reed raised his voice above the noise. "This young woman here spent her last $8 on a stranger. She didn't know who I was, what I'd done, or where I came from. But she saw a man in pain and chose compassion over fear. And that's something this world needs more of." The crowd cheered again. Maya blushed, shaking her head, but Reed continued. "So if you're watching this, remember, it doesn't take much to make a difference. One small act can start a storm of goodness. As the engines faded into the distance that night, Maya stood on her porch holding her jacket and the keys to her new bike. The world felt different now, brighter, fuller, possible. She looked up at the sky and whispered, "Thanks, Mom. You were right, kindness always finds its way back." And as a faint rumble echoed from somewhere down the highway, she smiled, knowing her story wasn't over, it was just beginning. Weeks turned into months, and the sound of roaring engines that once shook Maya's street became a memory she carried like a heartbeat, something distant, but alive inside her. Every morning, she'd walk past her new motorcycle parked outside her small apartment, sunlight glinting off its silver wings, reminding her that life could shift from despair to hope in the blink of an eye. She'd named it Grace, because that's what it felt like, undeserved mercy riding into her life on two wheels. The envelope from the bikers had done more than pay her debts, it bought her a chance to start over. Maya re-enrolled in nursing school, part-time at first, working days at a local clinic where the line of patients never seemed to end. But she didn't mind the long hours or the sore feet. Every tired face she met reminded her of Reed, sitting on that cold pavement under a flickering light, bleeding but proud, broken but still fighting. Whenever exhaustion crept in, she'd whisper to herself, "You already have the heart for it. Now use it." Those words, his words, became her anchor. But life has a way of testing those who dare to heal others. It was late one Friday when the call came in. The clinic had closed, the staff had gone home, and Maya was just locking the door when her phone buzzed, an unfamiliar number, but one that made her stomach twist the moment she saw the name, Reed. She hadn't heard from him in months, though she'd thought about him often. "Maya." His voice on the other end sounded strained, weaker than she remembered. "We need you." The background noise was chaos, shouting, engines, someone crying. "What's wrong?" she asked, heart pounding. "It's Tessa," he said, voice cracking. "There was an accident. The paramedics are half an hour out. You're the closest one who knows what to do." Without another word, Maya grabbed her bag, slung on her jacket, and ran out the door. The sky was heavy with thunderclouds, wind whipping her hair as she jumped on her bike. Grace roared to life, the engine's growl blending with the storm above. She sped down the wet roads, rain hitting her face, adrenaline pushing her faster. The night she had met Reed flashed through her mind, that same desperate urgency, that same fear of being too late. When she reached the clearing just off Route 19, her heart nearly stopped. Dozens of bikes were parked in the mud, their headlights cutting through the rain. In the center, Tessa lay on the ground, her leg pinned under a fallen bike. Reed was beside her, soaked and trembling. "She hit a deer," he said breathlessly. "Bike went down hard." Maya dropped to her knees beside Tessa, assessing the situation with practiced calm. "I need cloth, anything clean," she ordered, and instantly jackets, shirts, and bandanas were being thrown toward her. She wrapped Tessa's wound, applied pressure, and spoke softly. "Stay with me, Tessa. You're going to be okay." The rain poured harder, thunder cracking overhead, but Maya didn't notice. The bikers formed a circle around them, holding flashlights, shielding her from the storm like a living wall of leather and loyalty. Reed knelt beside her, shaking. "I couldn't lose her too," he whispered. Maya looked up at him, the same man who'd once told her people like him brought trouble, and said, "Then don't. Help me save her." Minutes felt like hours. The sound of sirens finally broke through the storm, and relief swept through the crowd as paramedics rushed in. One of them looked at Maya's work and nodded approvingly. "You stabilized her perfectly. You might have just saved her leg." Reed turned to Maya, his expression a mix of pride and disbelief. "You did it," he murmured. "You came for us." Maya smiled softly. "Of course I did. Family shows up." The word hung in the air, family. It was the first time either of them had said it out loud, but both knew it was true. Days later, Maya visited Tessa in the hospital. The room was filled with flowers, biker helmets stacked in the corner like offerings. Tessa grinned weakly when she saw her. "Guess I owe you one," she said. Maya laughed. "Let's call it even." Reed entered quietly, carrying a small box. He handed it to Maya. "We were saving this for your graduation," he said, "but I think you've already earned it." Inside was a delicate silver necklace shaped like a wing, identical to the ones painted on her motorcycle. For the angel who saved a Hell's Angel, he said, his rough voice thick with emotion. Maya's eyes welled with tears. You don't have to thank me. He shook his head. It's not thanks. It's a reminder that kindness rides both ways. As spring turned to summer, Maya passed her final exams, her name called out in a small ceremony where her classmates cheered, unaware that a group of bikers waited outside the building revving their engines in celebration. When she walked out wearing her nurse's badge, the entire street erupted in thunderous applause and the deep rumble of motorcycles. Reed lifted his helmet and shouted, "Once an angel, always an angel." She laughed through tears, feeling the weight of everything she'd overcome, the nights of hunger, the loneliness, the doubt, all replaced by purpose. She rode with them again that evening, the horizon stretched before her like an open book. But there was one last moment that sealed it all, the moment that would turn her story into legend among riders across the state. Months later, Maya received a letter in the mail with no return address, just the emblem of the Angels of Grace. Inside was a photo, her, Reed, and Tessa standing by the gas station where it had all begun, smiling under a sky of blue. On the back, in Reed's rough handwriting, were 4 words, "Kindness never rides alone." Beneath it was another envelope, this one a scholarship certificate, fully paid, for advanced nursing studies. Sponsored anonymously, but she didn't need to guess who was behind it. That night, Maya sat on her porch, the soft rumble of distant engines echoing through the hills. She placed a hand over her heart, whispering to the night, "Thank you for coming back to me." In that quiet, she realized her story wasn't about luck, it was about the echo of compassion. The $8 she once spent hadn't just bought a sandwich and a bottle of water, it had bought her a family, a future, a legacy. 5 years had passed since the night thunder filled the sky and kindness roared through Maya's quiet street. Time had weathered the edges of her memory, but not the warmth. The sound of engines still brought a smile to her lips, that deep, steady rumble that once shook her world awake. Life had taken her places she never dreamed possible. Maya was now Nurse Maya Thompson, head of the emergency unit at St. Mary's Regional Hospital, the youngest department leader they'd ever had. Her office wall was lined with photographs, not degrees or awards, but faces. The bikers she'd once saved and those who'd once saved her. In every smile was a reminder of where she came from and what kindness could build when given freely. Outside the hospital window, the world looked peaceful, but Maya knew better. Life had a way of breaking people quietly, just as it had broken her once. That's why, 3 years earlier, she'd founded the Road Home Foundation, a charity built from the ground up to provide food, shelter, and medical aid for struggling veterans, single parents, and wanderers who'd lost their way. It started small, in a rented garage with a few volunteers, but word spread faster than she ever expected. Bikers from all over the country showed up, men and women who had once lived rough, now riding for purpose. Reed and Tessa had been the first to join, turning their brotherhood into something new. They kept their leather, their engines, their fire, but now, they used them to deliver warmth instead of fear. They called themselves the Angels of Grace Ride Crew, and wherever they went, they carried Maya's story like a flag. Every summer, they held a charity ride, hundreds of motorcycles sweeping through highways, stopping at hospitals and shelters, leaving behind donations and stories that rekindled hope. On the 5th anniversary of that night, Maya stood before the largest crowd she'd ever seen, a sea of leather and chrome stretching across the horizon. The air smelled of gasoline and sunshine, and somewhere in the crowd, Reed's booming laugh echoed, older now but still full of life. He leaned on a cane these days, a badge of years well lived, and watched Maya like a proud father. When she stepped onto the small stage near the open road, the noise died down. Every biker lifted their helmets in respect. Maya took a deep breath, her voice trembling slightly as she spoke. 5 years ago, she began, I had $8 in my pocket, a broken spirit, and no reason to believe the world could be kind. Then one night, I met a man who taught me that even the roughest roads can lead to grace. I thought I was saving him, but truth is, he saved me too. Today, I see hundreds of faces that remind me why we ride, why we give, and why we never let anyone fall behind. Her eyes shimmered with tears, and a quiet murmur swept through the crowd, the kind of silence that means people are truly listening. Then she smiled, that same gentle smile that had once lit a gas station parking lot. If my mother were here, she continued softly, she'd tell you the same thing she told me when I was a little girl, that kindness isn't a weakness. It's a force. And when you lead with it, you change the world one heart at a time. She paused, then lifted her hand. So today, we ride not for glory, not for attention, but for the ones still lost out there, the ones waiting for someone to stop, look, and say, "You matter." The crowd erupted, engines roaring to life in perfect unison, their sound rolling like thunder across the fields. It wasn't noise, it was a promise, a heartbeat, a movement. Later that evening, as the sun melted into the horizon, Maya sat on her motorcycle, Grace, parked beside Reed's. The two watched the sky turn orange and gold, the light catching the chrome and painting the world in warmth. Reed broke the silence first. "You did it, kid," he said quietly. "You took one night, one act, and turned it into something the world can feel." Maya smiled. "We did it, Reed. I couldn't have done this without you." He chuckled. "Nah. You just gave us all a reason to believe again." She looked at him, his weathered face glowing in the sunset, and said softly, "Do you ever think about that night?" He nodded slowly. "Every day. It's the night my road turned back toward the light." The next morning, as the riders prepared to head out on their next journey, Reed handed Maya a small leather-bound journal. "What's this?" she asked. "Stories," he said. "Every person we've helped wrote something in there. We figured you should be the one to carry it now." She opened it, flipping through the pages, handwritten notes from people whose lives had been changed, veterans reunited with families, mothers finding jobs, kids getting scholarships. One note made her stop. It was written in a shaky scrawl, "To the girl who spent her last $8, you gave the world a reason to keep giving." She traced the words with her finger, tears forming again. That night, before the group split up, they gathered at the same old gas station where it all began. The sign still flickered, the pump still groaned, but now it was sacred ground, a reminder that even forgotten places could hold miracles. They parked their bikes in a perfect circle, headlights shining toward the center, and Reed stood beside Maya, holding a candle. "We light this," he said, "for everyone who thought kindness was gone. For everyone who ever gave their last dollar, their last ounce of hope, and didn't think it mattered." Maya took the candle and placed it on the ground, the flame dancing in the wind but never going out. Around her, 100 more candles followed, until the entire station glowed like a sea of stars. Maya whispered into the night, "Mom, if you're watching. I kept the promise." And just then, a gust of wind swept through the circle, making every candle flicker brighter, as if the universe itself was answering. Reed smiled. "Looks like she heard you." The next morning, Maya rode out first, leading the convoy. The road stretched endlessly before her, the wind tugging at her jacket, her heart full and light. Every mile carried the memory of that night, the lesson etched deep, that compassion doesn't fade, it multiplies. Somewhere, another lost soul would need help, another Maya would reach into her pocket, give what little she had, and start the chain all over again. The world might forget faces and names, but kindness leaves tracks no storm can wash away. So if you're hearing this story, remember Maya, the girl who spent her last $8 helping a stranger who wore a patch that scared the world, and got a family, a purpose, and a future in return. Remember that you don't need much to change someone's life, just the courage to care when no one else does. And if this story touched your heart, if it reminded you that goodness still rides among us, then don't forget to subscribe. Because every time you do, you join a road that never ends, one built on kindness, courage, and the belief that angels sometimes ride Harleys.